Hey guys, imagine you've just stumbled into an old library at midnight, where the dust smells like forgotten diaries, and a shadowy whisper flirts with the flicker of a dying chandelier. Sounds romantic, right? Or just a perfect excuse to avoid laundry. If you're curious and slightly terrified, smash that like button and drop a comment telling us the creepiest date you've ever survived. Because I need data for my next horror romance case study. Before we get too cozy, dim the lights, grab a blanket, maybe a candle, and tell your roommate you're researching love while you actually binge watch tragic poetry. You feel the cold marble under your feet. Hear the echo of a lover's sigh rolling like a low bass line, and smell the faint perfume of roses mixed with mildew. Like an Instagram filter gone rogue on a haunted Instagram story, modern romance is swipe right and ghost ed. This tale is literally written in shadows, where every tender note is a candlelit confession, and every pause is a dramatic eye roll from the universe. So let me know in the comments if you'd risk a midnight rendezvous for a love that haunts. And stay tuned, because the whispers are just getting louder. In a small village where the air smelled of wildflowers and freshly baked bread, Alara, a young artist with paint-splattered hands, wandered into the embrace of the dense woods that encircled her home like an ancient bodyguard. Today, however, something tugged at her spirit, pulling her toward an ancient path, one long forgotten and cloaked in shadows. It was as if the trees had whispered of its existence, each gnarled branch reaching out like an eager storyteller, desperate to share secrets. With each step, the world transformed around her. The chirping of the birds faded into a soft hum. The sunlight danced through the leaves, casting playful patterns on her skin. She felt a thrill, a sensation that was equal parts excitement and trepidation, as though she was about to enter a realm where time could turn itself inside out, like a magician's show gone a bit awry. As Alara ventured deeper down the path, her heart raced, not just from the thrill of discovery, but from an unshakable feeling of being watched. Suddenly, from the thick shadows emerged Selim, a figure draped in mystery and a hint of mischief, like a rogue character straight out of a novel she once adored. The air around him crackled with a curious energy, real as the scent of earth after rain. He had the sort of presence that made Alara's breath hitch, a blend of wildness and charm, half magic and half man. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, the world outside those woods faded, leaving only the two of them tangled in a moment that felt both exhilarating and impossibly significant. A scene fit for a rom-com with a twist, except for the lurking shadows in the background. Yet as days slipped by, their enchanting encounters blossomed into a charming escapade filled with laughter and stolen glances. But an undercurrent of unease whispered through the air, rustle of leaves at dusk. Tales of old, cloaked in time and wrapped in folklore, began to seep into their conversations of love, cursed by the very spirit of the woods, of wanderers who found solace only to be led astray. Alara listened with incredulity, her heart clashing with her head like two warriors in an epic showdown. Here she was, trying to paint her life with splashes of color, while the universe seemed intent on giving her a dark chiaroscuro instead. It was like falling for a character from a Greek tragedy, striking, but oh so dangerous, especially when the fates loom nearby, cackling over their knitting needles and spinning destiny into a knot. Still, love is a wild thing, isn't it? With the scent of pine mingled with the sweet touch of potential, Alara found herself blissfully ignoring the warnings that fluttered like moths against the flickering flame of her heart. Each moment with Selim deepened her enchantment. A shared laugh echoed like music in the glade, and the warmth of his gaze felt like the sun breaking through clouds after a long storm. But as light casts shadows, so too did their love dance, precariously close to the edge of an abyss of old legends. What if that which bound them together was a thread woven into a tapestry of doom? It was enough to make a girl pull her hair out in clumps, resembling a cartoon character in a moment of existential dread. Navigating love and lore with tangled emotions swirling around her like twirling leaves in the autumn wind, as yet another adventure unfolded under the watchful eyes of the trees. Alara couldn't shake off the feeling that their love story was more than a fairy tale. It was a riddle steeped in the shadows of the heart. The dense fog of mystery wrapped around them, and every cavernous breath felt like a secret waiting to be unearthed, gorgeous and intimidating. Like a first date with an enigmatic magician. What if their love was destined to awaken something ancient, a curse that lazed under the surface, ready to pounce at the first sign of happiness? Alara gazed at Selim, who smiled with that disarming charm, and she made a silent vow to savor every moment, even if it meant biting her nails like the protagonist in a summer blockbuster. Angst-ridden, yet ready to face the lurking shadows together. After all, who needs a fairy godmother when you have chemistry that ignites the very air around you? As twilight draped its fabric over the village, Alara and Selim stood within the sanctuary created by the thick trees, their hearts beating in a synchrony only love could compose. The warm glow of dusk painted Selim's face in hues of orange and pink, mirroring the fluttering butterflies in Alara's stomach. But just as they leaned closer, the wind whispered ominously, carrying on its chilly breath the flicker of shadows that danced along the outskirts, seeming to wriggle and squirm as if they possessed minds of their own. Villagers muttered tales of an age-old curse like haunted echoes from a bad horror movie, warning that when shadows creep at dusk, spirits of lost lovers come scratching at the edges of reality. It was enough to make even the bravest of hearts quicken their pace when the sun began to sink. A shroud of anxiety draping over the village, like a heavy woolen blanket soaked in unease. Determined not to let the stories divide them, Alara felt a surprising surge of rebellious, fiery spirit. Sure, maybe she had just watched a rom-com that day and gotten a bit carried away. However, the idea of giving in to shadowy curses was not in her nature. So, with a defiant flick of her hair and a smirk that could charm the rust off a sword, she dug deeper into the mythos surrounding them, armed with a candle and the courage of someone who consumes way too much coffee past midnight. Alara embarked on a quest to search for the truth, like a knight without armor, but with a heart made of pure audacity. It was then that her exploration led her to an old, cobweb-riddled attic, where the scent of dust mingled with the remnants of lost treasures, promising secrets long buried in the dim recesses of history. There, amid stacks of forgotten parchment and unattractive trinkets that probably smelled like grandma's perfume gone wrong, Alara found it. A peculiar artifact, half buried under what could only be described as a mound of clutter that would induce panic in even the most seasoned hoarder. As she dusted it off, the artifact gleamed with a beguiling luster, illuminating the dark corners of the attic with a spectral glow. It was a locket, intricately designed, but chill to touch, as if it held the moonlight captive. This wasn't just any locket. It belonged to Selim her Selim, and somehow it seemed to pulse with the rhythm of his heartbeat, each thrum pulling her inexorably closer to the dark secret hidden within his lineage. Flashes of errant thoughts erupted in her mind, with every heartbeat thrumming in confusion and dread. The urgency of their situation grew palpable. Alara's determination transformed into a waltz with danger, and the shadows seemed to swirl closer, whispering a dark symphony of ancient grievances and unsought destinies. It felt like one of those cinematic moments where the protagonists discover they're just pawns in a larger game. The ominous plot thickening, like that last slice of pizza you regret, but can't resist. Yet through the growing chaos, love forged a path, refusing to be extinguished, igniting rebellion against a fate written in shadows. Together, Alara and Selim would have to confront not just the whispers of their village, but the very darkness that threatened to consume their hearts. Alara's heart raced like a trapped bird, flapping wildly against the cage of her ribs as she padded along the narrow, winding path to the village elders. The air shimmered with an humidity that clung to her skin, every bead of sweat a reminder of her turmoil. Her mind swirled with anxious thoughts, much like the storm clouds gathering above. She could feel the weight of her family's expectations pressing down on her shoulders, heavier than a sack of stones, threatening to crush her spirit. Rumors of perilous matters danced through her mind, each whisper a dagger digging deeper into her resolve. Somewhere in the distance, a crow cawed, a harbinger of doom that sent a shiver down her spine, as if even the birds sensed the darkening shadows around her heart. But how could Alara extinguish the fire that warmed her soul? With Selim, every stolen glance felt like a secret shared under the glimmer of stars, electric and intoxicating. His laughter resonated like music, lifting her spirit higher than the tallest trees in the forest. Yet, the elder's prophetic words echoed ominously in her mind, reminding her that love could also wield a sword, sharp and merciless, ready to cleave apart her world. Could she really shatter the bond that filled her heart with light, just to save him from an uncertain fate? Each thought was a splinter, embedding itself deeper into her skin, painfully reminding her of her obligations to her family, a duty that felt like an anchor dragging her under. As days turned into nights, the weight of her decision loomed larger, like a shadow stretching across the moonlit ground. She could almost taste the bitterness of betrayal as it slid down her throat like sour wine, potent and stinging. Alara's dreams morphed into vivid landscapes of anguish, visions of Selim's suffering crafted from her own doubts and fears. In those dreams, she envisioned him trapped within a vortex of shadows, crying out for her as if she were the only beacon of hope in his dark abyss. And with each call, she felt torn between two worlds, the world of passion entwined with Selim, and the one that strove to protect her family's honor, a tangle of loyalty and love twisting like wild vines in her heart. Somewhere within her, she knew that not all paths steered clear, not all promises could be kept without sacrifice. The village festival, a yearly spectacle that danced under the pale moonlight, transformed from a jubilant celebration into a scene ripped straight from a nightmare. Lanterns flickered like frightened fireflies, and the sweet scent of warm pastries clashed with the acrid odor of fear and chaos. Laughter morphed into frantic screams as the cursed shadows slithered from the crevices, wrapping themselves around the unsuspecting villagers like a melancholy cloak. It was as if a dark magic had dropped in uninvited, turning the night into a decaying tapestry of horror. Alara's heart raced, a drumbeat of dread and determination that intersected with the vibrant chaos around her. She held on to hope with the fierceness of a cat at a dog show, claws out, ready to fight for the one she loved. Selim, Alara's eyes locked onto the source of the curse, an ancient artifact pulsating with a sinister glow that beckoned to her like a siren's song. It perched precariously upon a pedestal, its surface swirling with patterns resembling the very shadows that now sought to engulf her village. As she stepped forward, the air crackled with an energy both exhilarating and malevolent, sending shivers down her spine that felt like electric whispers. In that moment, she couldn't help but think of those old horror flicks where the hero, against all reason, decides to explore the dark basement instead of hightailing it out of there. Was she foolish for confronting this dark heart of shadows? Or was this the moment where legends are born, where courage dances with despair under the eyes of fate? In a heart-stopping moment, time seemed to stretch, the world hanging in the balance like a piñata at a party, waiting to burst open with color or dark misfortunes. Selim emerged from the fray, a beacon of love amidst the swirling darkness, and Alara's heart swelled with a bittersweet hope. But as shadows swarmed around them, she was faced with an impossible choice, a sacrifice that could either save Selim or dooming them both to an eternity hidden among the shadows. It felt like one of those gut-wrenching cliffhanger season finales where the fate of the lovers dangled by a thread, the viewers left shouting at their screens. The cusp of her decision weighed heavily, charged with emotions that mixed dread and resolve into an intoxicating brew neither could deny. In that moment of turmoil, love and sacrifice intersected like two brilliantly contrasting colors on a painter's canvas, splashing across the scene with raw intensity. Alara's resolve crystallized. She grasped the artifact, channeling her love for Selim into a surge of power that sent shockwaves through the shadows. The darkness writhed and screamed, but she refused to yield. A fierce warrior wielding the sharpest blade of affection. With a brilliant flash, the shadows recoiled under the onslaught of her determination, unraveling before them like a poorly knitted sweater. As the village erupted in sounds of chaos mixed with halting breaths, the fates of Alara and Selim hung by a single thread, a delicate balance swaying between shadow and light, forever altering the narrative of their intertwined lives. Alara's heart swelled as she turned to Selim, his figure now bathed in the soft glow of the morning light, every line of his face carved by laughter and pain. How they had danced the dance of misfortune, slipping and sliding through the perils that seemed determined to keep them apart. Shadows are just our hearts showing off their dramatic flair, she mused humorously, recalling the countless times their laughter could drown out the weight of their fears. Together, they formed a duo that could rival any superhero team, their powers amplifying with every challenge they overcame. Like Batman and Robin, traversed the underbelly of heartache. But today, they emerged as the champions of love reborn. With the curse lifted, the air around them crackled with electrifying possibilities. Alara reached for Selim's hand, their fingers intertwining like vines of ivy on a crumbling wall, and she felt an undeniable warmth radiate through her. It's funny how she had once thought that love was merely a fairy tale concocted by overly sentimental poets. Yet here she was, living proof that when two souls truly connect, magic happens. Birds burst into song around them, chirping a melodious confirmation of their victory, whilst the sun climbed higher, directly responsible for flickering shadows that now danced cheerfully on the ancient stones. They had forged their own narrative, a pathway lit by hope rather than despair. Hand in hand through the overgrown paths of life, with the promise of an exciting future ahead, Alara and Selim stepped forward, fully embracing the sunlight that washed over them like a warm embrace from an old friend. "Let's go find our next adventure," Selim declared, a twinkle in his eye reminiscent of a mischievous child planning a grand escapade. Together, they set forth into the world, leaving the ruins behind, not as a reminder of their hardships, but as a landmark of victory. They knew that in the ongoing saga of life, shadows might return, but their hearts would always whisper louder, reminding them that love could truly conquer all. And they would be ready, armed with laughter, hope, and a little bit of magic. Because, after all, no great story ever ended without a glimmer of the extraordinary. In the heart of a kingdom crackling with unease, where the cobblestones echoed with the hurried steps of those demanding change, Alara's world stood like a tower of velvet drapes, oppressive, yet oddly comforting. The scent of freshly baked bread wafted through the air, but Alara hardly noticed, her stomach knotting with the impending secret. Oh, the irony. Here she was, the daughter of a count, attending clandestine meetings, as if plotting a heist for the last donut on a Friday math test. And truth be told, she could almost hear her mother's voice, clucking like a disappointed hen, scolding her for traipsing into danger, rather than dancing at the latest lavish ball. Yet her heart was determined to dance to a different rhythm, one fueled by the fire of revolution. And a certain rebel named Kalan, who had turned her world upside down with just a few stolen glances and fervent words. Whispers of change curled around them with the tang of smoke and iron, each word echoing the thoughts racing in Alara's mind. The chaotic streets outside, filled with the cries of discontent, painted a raw picture of what lay ahead. And Alara couldn't shake the feeling that she was a player in a dangerous game, one crafted by the whims of history. The sounds of metal clashing and distant shouts filtered through the meeting place, an old stone archway where shadows danced like nervous lovers, unsure of their next move. Her thoughts spiraled. Should she uphold the values of her station, or plunge headfirst into the brink of possibility with Kaelan, whose conviction ignited a fire in her spirit? With every heartbeat, with every harsh inhale, the winds of revolution pulled her closer to the precipice, and she teetered, half excited, half terrified, on the edge of decision, as Kaelan spoke of battles to come and dreams, yet unfulfilled. Alara's senses swirled, a dizzying cocktail brewed from fear, admiration, and something far more intoxicating. The mingled scent of sweat and rebellion hung heavy in the air, a reminder that the fight for freedom was never pretty or simple. To her right, the flickering candlelight struggled against the encroaching darkness, much like her own resolve, causing a soft blush to rise in her cheeks. Humor bubbled beneath her surface, much like soda fizzing under pressure. What would her friends say if they could see her now? Would they call her brave, or perhaps simply mad for falling for a man whose very name could cross her family off their guest list forever? In the flickering shadows cast by the torches lining the cobblestone streets, Alara and Kaelan found a clandestine point of intersection, an abandoned cellar, ripe with the scent of damp earth and echoes of forgotten whispers. As the distant clanging of metal clashed, and the acrid smell of smoke wafted from raging protests, their hearts raced in sync, a symphony of rebellion igniting within them. They exchanged glances, feeling like characters from one of those old Shakespearean tales, caught in a tempest of passion and societal misery. But unlike Juliet and Romeo, theirs was not merely an affair. Rather, it felt like a clandestine mission, battling forces greater than themselves, all narrated by the thudding beats of their hidden desires. With each stolen moment, they were not only defying orders, but also rewriting the rules of love, one pulse at a time. Whispers of a revolution crackled in the air like a charged downed power line. And though Alara's family fortified their loyalty to the crown, her heart refused to follow suit. She should have been waterlogged with guilt. And yet, there was an intoxicating thrill in defying her own lineage. She absently toyed with the hem of her dress, a garment meant for tea parties, but repurposed for the wild chaos of night rendezvous. Their shared laughter bubbled over the dire stakes, turning the dank cellar into a kingdom of their own, where dreams danced despite the weight of a world on fire. But, like a bad horror movie trailer, a storm was brewing, threatening to rip them apart with the ferocity of a feral beast hungry for retribution. As they shared heated kisses, the metallic tang of tension lingered in the air, mingling with the scent of sweat and revolution. The thrill of danger added a spice to their romance, turning even a simple peck into a deliciously forbidden fruit. Yet underneath it all lay an undercurrent of dread. Alara's family, staunch supporters of the crown, had plans to quash the uprising, and therein lay the monstrous twist of fate. Kaelin's laughter hung heavy in her ears, echoing like an unfurling flame, beautiful, terrifying, and completely unpredictable. With every passionate embrace, Alara felt a knot of anxious, foreboding tighten in her stomach, a reminder of the ticking clock echoing louder than their heartbeats. In the war of loyalties, love became both a sanctuary and a battlefield. With hearts intertwined, yet worlds apart, they faced each new dawn unsure if it would bring reunion or ruin. Each whispered promise tasted like the last cookie in the jar, sweet, but potentially gone with a single careless decision. The flames of the revolution flickered brightly outside, but it was in the shadows where their real fight lay, a battle wrapped within the walls of their hearts. Would love conquer the battleground of conflicting allegiances, or would it be extinguished amidst the chaos? Only time would tell if their hearts could survive the storm brewing outside, or if they would be forever engulfed in the flames of revolution. Meanwhile, Kaelin's resolute voice soared above the crowd, igniting flames of hope in the hearts of the downtrodden. He rallied the rebels in a passionate speech, his words sparking a wild fire of courage against their oppressors. But just as Alara clutched her heart like a scene out of a melodrama, disaster struck. The iron shackles of royal guards snapped shut around him like a bad Netflix series. Plot twist, she gasped, the sound lost in the din of the crowd as he was dragged away, his defiant eyes locking with hers for a fleeting second that felt as eternal as the sun setting behind the blood-stained horizon. It was a moment forged in both horror and passion, where the very essence of their love was tested against the flames of conflict and treachery. Desperation clawed at Alara's throat like a ravenous wolf, urging her to act. She tore through the chaos, heart racing, adrenaline surging like a torrent of wild waters. The air thick with tension, crackled with betrayal, as she caught glimpses of familiar faces, some allies, others foes, who exchanged glances that could slice through steel in their wickedness. They no longer wore the masks of friends, but instead donned the grim visages of revolution, ready to tear apart the fragile bonds of trust built over years. She could almost hear the echoes of their laughter turned sinister. This was no longer a mere political struggle. It was an all-out war, and she was caught in its relentless crosshairs. As the rebellion reached its boiling point, Alara's world danced on the edge of a knife, sharp and unforgiving. She ducked into a shadowy alley, her breath hitching as the chaos raged on behind her. The streets, once filled with laughter and light, were now painted in shades of despair, each corner holding the potential for heartbreak or brutal betrayal. The faces of the captured flashed through her mind like an unsettling slideshow, a stark reminder that this love story was tangled in a web of revolution. She knew that some would not emerge unscathed, and in that iron-gripped moment of uncertainty, Alara clenched her fists with fierce resolve. Love was worth fighting for, even as the flames of conflict threatened to consume everything she held dear. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an ominous crimson glow over the besieged city, flames danced like wild spirits, licking the skies of war. Alara stood at the threshold of her family's grand but crumbling palace, her heart throbbing like a battle drum. The acrid scent of smoke, mixed with the metallic tang of fear, hung heavily in the air, wrapping around her like a shroud. With a trembling resolve, she stepped forward, knowing that tonight she would not only defy her bloodline, but also dive headfirst into the swirling chaos to rescue Kaelan, the very man her family had deemed a traitor. This is going to be more complicated than a soap opera reunion, she thought, rolling her eyes at the irony of her own predicament. Finally, she reached the stark wooden door that held her captive heart inside. With the grace of a cat burglar, and let's be honest, the reckless enthusiasm of someone fueled by love, she thrust the door open. There he was, Kaelan, shackled and bruised, eyes ablaze with a mix of joy and confusion that might have rivaled 1,000 Shakespearean sonnets. "I always knew you'd come for me, Alara," he said, a smirk breaking the tension, as if they were caught in a quirky romantic comedy rather than a deadly revolution. But there was no time for quips. Even in this moment of reunion, the flames clamored for attention, roaring with laughter, as if hinting at the fiery passion that had drawn them both here amidst the destruction. As the room filled with the stench of smoke and the roar of battle outside crescendoed, Alara faced a choice that could shatter the delicate balance of her existence. Could she betray her family's legacy for a love that felt as eternal and fierce as the flames threatening to consume them? It was a pure, gut-wrenching kind of irony that the most precious things often demanded the highest sacrifices. The flickering firelight mirrored the tumult in her heart, each crackle echoing the voices of her ancestors, urging her towards loyalty over love. "Sorry, Grandma, but my heart's not in your bloodline doctrine," she thought, standing at the precipice of her destiny, ready to burn the bridge back to her past. As dawn broke over the smoldering remains of the city, the air crackled with a mix of hope and the lingering scent of ash. Alara and Kaelan stood amidst the ruins, their silhouettes framed against the warm glow of the rising sun, each battered building a testament to the struggle they had endured. The weight of the revolution hung heavy. Yet in that moment, their hands clasped tight. They felt an electrifying current of possibility. It was as if the very earth beneath their feet whispered the promise of renewal, beckoning them to rebuild not just their city, but their lives. "You know," Kaylin said with a wry smile, "if we were characters in a bad romance novel, this would be the part where we run away together, preferably on a glorious steed." Yet, with every step they took through the debris, Alara felt the pang of loss, not just for friends and family who hadn't survived, but for a world that had fallen apart. The cries of the past echoed in her mind like a haunting symphony, each note infused with pain and longing. She brushed her fingers against a tattered flag. The colors faded, but still vibrant in memory, and felt the pulse of revolution humming through her veins. "We've danced on the edge of oblivion," she mused, her voice carrying the weight of her experiences. "But now, it's our turn to compose a new melody." Kaylin nodded, a flicker of mischief in his eyes. Just not one of those catchy pop songs that you can't get out of your head, right? As they ventured deeper into the heart of the city, the pulse of life seemed to throb in tandem with their own hearts, a reminder that even in destruction, rebirth was imminent. Each face they encountered bore stories of survival and dreams that flickered like candle flames in the wind. It was a tapestry woven from threads of desperation and determination, and Alara felt inexplicably woven into it, strengthened by the shared struggle. "We're like those phoenixes," she said, marveling at the resilience of humanity, rising from ashes and whatnot. Kaylin chuckled. "If we're rising from ashes, I hope I get superpowers. Gotta make this dating thing easier." With their intertwined futures stretching before them, Alara and Kaylin made a pact beneath the shattered remains of a once grand structure. They vowed to honor those who had fallen, to push back against the shadows that threatened to choke the life from their dreams. Their love, once a clandestine affair hidden in the dark alleys of a choking city, had morphed into a blazing fire, a testament to the endurance of the human spirit. Just like that iconic movie, they had defied the odds, become the champions of their own story, their whispers promising that the echoes of eternity would carry their voices forward. As they stood together, they couldn't help but laugh. After all, if they could survive revolution, they could tackle anything, even building IKEA furniture together. It was beneath this oak that Alara first met Lysander, a soldier whose presence was as striking as the glint of his sword under the midday sun. His weary eyes told stories of battles fought and comrades lost, yet they sparkled with a light that gave her strength. The scent of fresh earth mixed with the faint tang of smoke from distant fires, created a suffocating air. But together, they crafted a sanctuary of dreams and whispered fears. Their words danced like fireflies, illuminating possibilities, weaving tales of peace amid the chaos. Each secret shared beneath the trees, massive limbs strengthened their connection, as if the oak itself were binding their hearts with whispers of love that reverberated through time. Yet humor found its way into their gatherings, with Lysander taking to adorning his tales of valor with daring exaggerations. I once single-handedly fended off an entire brigade of 300 soldiers, he would declare, drawing laughter from Alara, who playfully rolled her eyes, knowing full well he couldn't have lifted a heavy basket of apples without help. If only the army could see your talent for theatrics, she teased, causing his laughter to blend with her own, echoing through the oak's embrace. Their banter bridged the heaviness of war, forging a bond that at times felt like walking a tightrope stretched between joy and despair. Yet, with each light-hearted moment, they crafted a fleeting canvas of happiness against a backdrop marked by loss and destruction. As the village braced for the full force of war, Alara clung to the hope that love could serve as their anchor, even as Lysander prepared for the inevitable call to arms. With every passing day, as the oak whispered secrets and promises, their bond grew resilient, yet heavy, weighed down by the dread of parting. Alara pressed her palm against the rough bark, feeling its strength, a silent pledge that love could endure even the harshest storms. No matter where this war leads us, she declared softly, the oak will always hold our dreams. Beneath its unwavering branches, their hearts forged a defiant love story, one that would outlast the clash of swords and the cries of battle, resonating in eternity long after the last echoes of conflict faded into history. The sun dipped low behind the distant hills, casting long shadows over the scarred landscape, a cruel reminder of the war that raged beyond the horizon. Alara nestled beneath the sprawling oak, its gnarled branches offering a semblance of safety. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and the bittersweet perfume of wildflowers. But with each passing day, the blooms felt like a cruel joke against the ever-looming storm of conflict. As she waited, her heart raced like a war horse, thumping loudly in her chest, echoing her dread that today might be the last time she saw Lysander. The very thought sent icy fingers of anxiety curling around her spine, tightening until she felt like she might scream, or worse, faint like a damsel in distress in one of those overly dramatic plays her friends loved to stage back in the village. But the hopeful bubble they had created was punctured by the grim news that drifted like smoke on the wind. The neighboring village was calling for soldiers, hungry for fresh bodies to send off into the fray. Lysander's face fell. That light-hearted twinkle dimmed, replaced by the gravity of impending duty, as the specter of being drafted loomed large. Alara felt a shiver of dread, akin to the icy breath of winter creeping into her bones, as she clutched his hands tighter, as if trying to anchor him to this moment, this sanctuary. "You won't go, will you?" she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper, fearing the answer. He opened his mouth, probably to reassure her, but the weight of his unspoken thoughts hung heavily between them, making the silence louder than the battlefield itself. In that fraught moment, under the sprawling oak that seemed to witness their every heartbeat, they made a pact, tangible and fierce. With the air shivering with the promise of thunder, they declared that love could still flourish amidst the chaos of war. Lysander embraced her, the warmth of his body radiating through her like a lifeboat in a stormy sea, promising that they would fight for what they had. Like Rome and Juliet, but less tragic, he joked, attempting to lighten the weight of fate threatening to crash down upon them. But behind those teasing words lay a palpable fear, a fear that, despite their promises, the whims of war were more powerful than any vow. And Alara felt her heart twist into a pretzel of hope and dread. In the heart of the village, chaos erupted like a boiling cauldron, spilling over with despair and agitation. The scent of smoke clung to the air, mingling with the sweet yet sad aroma of blooming lilacs. A cruel reminder that life continued even as the storm approached. Whispers of soldiers marching under a flag of despair sent tremors through families gathered in huddles, panic tightening their throats as fear wrapped its icy fingers around their hearts. Alara stood in her small, modest home, clutching a weathered letter in her trembling hands, the ink smudged by the tears that fell like rain. The news was grim. Lysander's unit was ordered into an encroaching battle, the kind that made legends out of the fallen and left villages weeping for the past. It was as if the entire world had conspired to turn their love into a tragic sketch, the kind that hung on a wall where no one dared to peek at the jagged edges of fate. With determination born of desperation, Alara fled toward the ancient oak, its gnarled roots anchoring her confusion and heartache. Under the sprawling shadow of its branches, reminders of their stolen moments wrapped around her, looking as inviting as a warm pie on a cold day. Here, where they had carved their initial dreams into the very bark, she felt the tendrils of dread clutch at her heart. Packed dirt and fallen leaves crunched underfoot like broken promises, and the distant sounds of clashing steel echoed ominously, punctuating her thoughts. Alara pressed her palm against the rough bark, searching for solace, her heart racing like a war horse as she imagined Lysander charging into battle, where the glory of valor was painted in crimson and gold. With a flicker of hope, she whispered to the oak, "Help me save him," channeling all the strength she could muster into the solidity of the tree that had witnessed their love bloom beneath its canopy. But as the night deepened, so did the shadows lurking inside her heart. Each rustle of leaves transformed into whispers of doubt, and the cool breeze felt more like an icy hand of fate pressing down on her shoulders. The oak, sturdy and unmoving, held witness to her tidal wave of emotions as she wept, the bitter salt of her sorrow mingling with the earth below. Lysander and the village found themselves tethered to a fate she wished to rewrite. But the threads of love twisted perilously along a path of destruction, like a badly drawn comic strip illustrating heroes destined to fall. A strange feeling nestled in her chest, a stubborn seedling of hope that sprouted in the unlikeliest of places. Yet it was drenched in sorrow and the weight of decisions yet to come. As the first stars appeared, twinkling like distant specters in a cruel theater, Alara realized that the greatest battles often raged not on fields of blood, but within the hearts of those left behind. With renewed determination, Alara wiped her tears and vowed to fight for their future, even if it meant facing the very man she loved in opposition. The dawn would bring more than the sun's light. It would bring the final clarity to their storm. She pictured Lysander, strong and brave, leading his companions through the din of chaos, while she stood at home, crafting a different kind of shield words that could pierce harder than any sword. The oak bore witness to her fury and desperation, its leaves rustling in agreement, as if giving her the silent nod of a trusted ally. Love was worth the war, and she would wield her voice as her greatest weapon. Stay with me, even if just until the storm passes. With that oath tucked tightly in her heart, Alara prepared to gather her courage, knowing that amidst the gathering storm, a deeper battle simmered just beneath the surface. Lysander stood caught in the eye of the storm. Amidst the fray, sweat drenching his brow like a hastily poured pint at a pub. Every clang of metal resonated painfully through his bones, reminding him that valor seldom arrives without a price. He felt the weight of his sword, as though it were pulling him toward the earth, while his thoughts only drifted back to the tranquil haven beneath their beloved oak. The sweet scent of wildflowers contrasted sharply with the acrid sting of gunpowder filling the air, blending into a cocktail of nostalgia and impending doom. Here he was, a soldier torn between the loyalty to his comrades and the love that called him back to Alara, the one who threaded laughter into the fabric of his existence. The battle raged on, a furious tempest of men, where faces morphed into grimaces of defeat and desperation. a brutal reminder that life hung by a thread. Lysander, with his heart racing like a charged battery, felt a pang of irony tinged with his dark humor. What's a hero without a villain? In the midst of this turmoil, the oak tree loomed in his mind's eye, magnificent and steadfast, a promise of solace amid chaos. Each blow exchanged on the battlefield reminded him of the kisses stolen under that very tree, the way the bark felt beneath their entwined fingers. Yet here he stood, teetering on the brink of a choice that could sever the connection binding him to her soul. The world spun around Lysander as he faced a critical moment, where camaraderie and love stood at odds like mismatched socks on laundry day. Did duty bind him to his fellow soldiers? Or could he carve out a fleeting moment to embrace the woman who stole his breath? He could almost hear her laughter, mingling with the shouts of war, a haunting melody mingled with the chaos of clashing swords. The oak murmured in the breeze, offering refuge and unspoken promises of a life unmade. Time seemed to tangle as he hesitated, leaving breadcrumbs of doubt in the wake of his heart. Would he choose love or wear the mantle of a soldier? No, there was often no clear answer, only the desperate pull of a heart, and the looming specter of war reminding them both that love, in desperate moments, is either a fateful choice or a lingering regret. As dawn broke over the ravaged village, the chilling echoes of battle began to fade, replaced by the mournful cries of those who lost loved ones. The air was thick with the odor of charred wood and the metallic tang of blood, a grotesque reminder of the fiery chaos that had erupted just hours before. Villagers wandered the debris-laden streets, their faces as gray as the ashen skies above, while the distant wails of mourning filled every corner. Yet, in the heart of this desolation, hope flickered, just like the embers from the remains of homes, tiny but stubborn, refusing to be snuffed out. It was in this crucible of despair that love took on a new form, forged in the unyielding flames of war, as two hearts awaited reunion beneath the old oak tree, a place that had witnessed innocence turn to longing, and now resilience sprouting like wildflowers through cracks in the stone. Alara's heart soared as she saw Lysander, her brave knight returning from the battlefield, battle-worn, but unmistakably alive. Tears sprang forth, mingling with the remnants of laughter shared under that very tree long before the war's shadow had blanketed their lives. The oak, which had stood resilient through the changing seasons, bore witness to their unwavering bond, a testament to the strength that love could muster even when the world around them crumbled like an old manuscript. With every embrace, they poured their hearts into each other, whispering promises that flickered through the grief, blending love with sorrow in a startling act of defiance. The sun broke through the clouds, casting light on their reunion, an almost cinematic moment that felt surprisingly normal amid the chaos, as if the entire universe had conspired to highlight their undeniable connection. In the days that followed, as villagers went about the arduous task of burying their dead and rebuilding their lives, Lysander and Alara banded together, their shared pain becoming the greatest force of all. They rallied their neighbors, gathering strength with laughter that echoed through the ruins like a breath of fresh air, dispelling the cloying sense of loss that threatened to consume them all. The smell of freshly baked bread wafted through the streets as villagers came together to share something as basic yet nourishing as their love, food kindling warmth in cold hearts. With each heartfelt connection, the threads of their community began to mend, as if they were stitching a quilt from the remnants of their shattered lives, threading in bits of joy and sorrow. Each piece a reminder of what they had lost and what they were rebuilding. And amidst it all, Lysander frequently joked that between the two of them, they could hold off another war with just sheer determination and a heaping pile of elbow grease. On a sunlit morning in the quaint coastal town of Eldermere, where the salty breeze carried hints of seaweed and adventure, Elijah sauntered along the shore, her fingers sandy and her heart light. Suddenly, a glimmer caught her eye, an ancient bottle, half buried in the damp, shifting sands like a forgotten secret waiting to be unearthed. With the excitement of a kid digging for buried treasure, only slightly less dramatic than a pirate reveal, she plucked it from its marine grave, its surface slick with the ocean's kiss. Inside, a fragile yellowed letter lay folded, the ink faded, but the words yearning to breathe in light again. It was like discovering a long-lost episode of her favorite soap opera, and her heart raced with curiosity as the mysteries of time beckoned her closer to the tale of love locked away for centuries. As her fingers trembled with anticipation, Elijah carefully unfolded the letter, revealing elegant cursive flowing across the page like waves cradling the shore. The message, penned by a sailor named Selim, dripped with emotion as he poured his heart out to a woman named Isolde. "My heart is an ocean, deep and uncharted," he had written, and Elijah couldn't help but giggle at the romantic flourish. Clearly, this guy had watched way too many rom-coms. The letter, despite its age, radiated passion, as if Selim's longing was a beacon from the past, daring Elijah to decipher the rest of their story. She felt an inexplicable kinship with Isolde, as if they were sharing a cosmic connection over cups of tea and heartaches, the kind of feeling you get when your favorite song comes on, and suddenly the world starts to make sense. As days turned into weeks, Elijah found herself entrenched in the lore of Selim and Isolde, unraveling their tale like the best kind of yarn left unspooled. She would sit beneath the gnarled branches of the old oak at the edge of town, its leaves whispering laughter, while she read more letters, maps, and accounts, piecing together their beautiful saga with a dramatic flair befitting a Shakespearean play. Selim's adventures unfolded like an epic blockbuster. Tempestuous seas, clandestine meetings under the moonlight, and the heartbreak of war that threatened to tear the couple apart. Her heart pounded like a drum, immersed in their emotions, and she couldn't help but laugh at the daily ironies of being lost in their lives, while her own turned mundane. Perhaps this was what love felt like, a beautiful, chaotic quest that totally messes up one's neatly planned to-do list. And then, like a grand crescendo in a symphony building to its climax, Elijah stood on a cliff that overlooked the churning ocean, the very waters that had carried Selim to her. Across time and space, the sunset painted the sky in hues of passion, orange and pink twirling like wily dancers, while Elijah felt an awakening deep within her soul, as though she were channeling the spirits of Isolde and Selim. The questions swirling in her mind blended with the salty wind. What became of their love? Did Isolde ever receive his letters? With her heart racing like an over-caffeinated squirrel, she realized this wasn't merely a quest of the past, but a mirror reflecting her own heart's desire. In that fleeting moment, as the tide lapped at her feet, Elijah embarked on an adventure far exceeding anything contained within an ancient bottle, one that might just tie her fate with theirs. Lost in the ages, yet lingering in the present, her fingers brushed along the spines of ancient tomes, feeling the textured leather under her touch. A tactile connection to a world that felt both foreign and intimately familiar. When she finally stumbled upon a faded manuscript detailing the love story of Selim and Isolde, she felt a jolt, like she had just plugged into a cosmic outlet. The tale was one of passion and heartache, set against the backdrop of churning tides that echoed the tumult of the lovers' hearts. The sketchy outlines of their devotion, marred by fate's cruel twists, made her chuckle sadly, reminding her of some romance flick where the protagonist trips just as they're about to kiss. Except, in this drama, the stakes were far more dire, and there were no happy endings in sight. Each word she absorbed felt like a thread pulling her closer to their tragic fate, igniting a yearning deep within her that she couldn't quite place. As she dug deeper, the library transformed around her. The air grew heavy with the weight of sorrow and lost dreams. She could almost smell the salt of the ocean amidst the musty pages, a bittersweet reminder of the tides that had conspired against Selim's and Isolde's reunion. According to the otherworldly tales spun by the townsfolk, their love was a force of nature, yet just as fickle, like a Wi-Fi signal, strong one moment, then abruptly cut off the next. Elijah laughed to herself, recognizing the irony of their plight. The universe sometimes felt like it was live streaming a romantic comedy, complete with dramatic irony and a cliffhanger that would leave viewers gasping, unwilling to let the waves of sadness drown her spirit. She resolved to unearth every scrap of history, every artifact that could breathe life back into their sorrowful love story. Elijah finally emerged from the library, clutching a fragile letter penned by Isolde herself. The ink almost faded, but the emotions contained within as fresh as a morning dew. The sunlight wrapped around her, a warm hug after the cold kiss of history, and she felt a strange sense of connection uniting past and present, a kinship with the lovers who had endured so much. She chuckled softly, a hint of rebellious joy dancing in her voice as she imagined Selim and Isolde watching over her, dramatically rolling their eyes at her modern-day antics, perhaps wondering why she didn't just text them, since communication seems so much easier these days. Yet the weight of their tragic narrative lingered, reminding her that even in love's most glorious moments, there could be shadowy echoes of despair. With a mixture of excitement and sorrow fluttering in her chest, she set off, her mission clear. She would not rest until their story was fully unraveled, tides of time be damned. In the quaint village of Eldermere, where the air lingered with the sweet aroma of blooming honeysuckle, and the sound of rustling leaves played a symphony with each passing breeze, Elijah embarked on a quest that felt like the script of a time-bending rom-com. As she delved deeper into the enigma of the tides that seemed to whisper secrets from the past, her friends raised skeptical eyebrows, the kind that could pierce through steel. They called her obsession a folly, a wild goose chase fit for legends and lunatics. Yet their doubts only stoked the fire inside her, igniting a hunger for knowledge that echoed like a distant drumbeat in her chest, urging her to uncover the truth, even if it led her to the land of the lost sock or beyond. But little did she know, the gods of fate were about to send her a postcard from an era she never imagined she'd be connected to. As Bertram recounted local legends of time travelers meddling in the affairs of the past with disastrous outcomes, romances gone awry, towns cursed to forever chase their own shadows, and more than a few toe-curling mishaps, Elijah felt the walls of skepticism surrounding her friends solidifying into a fortress of disbelief. Yet with each tale spun, she grew more resolved, as though the universe had switched her internal dial from doubt to determination. Goosebumps marched down her arms as she contemplated the risks, meddling with time could either be the ultimate mixtape of love and history, or a hilarious catastrophe on par with a sitcom's worst moments. The stakes were high, but what was life without a bit of theater, a sprinkle of chaos, and the chance to rewrite the script? Summoning her bravery, she prepared herself to plunge into the depths of destiny, fueled by visions of love and laughter that echoed through the annals of time. However, the weight of this newfound knowledge settled heavily upon Elijah's shoulders, a cloak woven from threads of dread and curiosity. Doubts whispered in her ear like pesky mosquitoes at a summer picnic, buzzing sinister warnings about what might come of unearthing such potent truths. The thought of crashing into her own romantic timeline, wreaking havoc on what was meant to be like a character, unintentionally ruining the plot twist, sat uncomfortably in her stomach, a feast of existential noodles. And yet, the vision of Isolde winking at her from the canvas ignited a spark of hope that perhaps diving deeper could illuminate her path, revealing futures she'd never dared to dream. While sitting with popcorn on her couch, what-ifs danced like fireflies around her head, igniting both fear and excitement like batter splattering from an overzealous food processor. On the fateful night of the rare lunar eclipse, the air crackled with an electric urgency as Elijah stood at the edge of the cliffs, staring into the inky abyss below. The moon, a ghostly orb hanging tantalizingly low, seemed to beckon her closer, a celestial siren singing an ancient, forgotten tune. The winds whipped around her, pulling at her hair like playful spirits eager to tell their tales. She felt a strange pull, an invisible thread weaving her fate with that of the past, guiding her to this very spot where Selim once bravely sailed into destiny, only to be thwarted by the tempest of time. The ocean roared beneath, its voice a cacophony of wrath that echoed the turmoil in her heart. As she quietly pondered if this was madness or destiny's design, or perhaps a little bit of both, wrapped up in moonlight and maritime mystery. And then, with a shudder that sent chills racing down her spine, the storm within mirrored the storm without, the clouds gathering like a dark army bent on reclaiming lost history. Elijah's heart raced as she envisioned the moment when Selim and Isolde, once star-crossed lovers, were torn apart by nature's fury. The crashing waves and violent wind, not unlike a dramatic breakup scene from a cheesy romance flick, but with a lot more biting saltwater and fewer sappy monologues. As she closed her eyes, the scenes unfolded, their hands slipping away, helpless cries swallowed by the tumult, and fleeting glances of love turned into dread. Everything felt familiar, as if she were an actress rehearsing a long-forgotten script, with every detail honed to a sharp and painful clarity. Oh, the irony. Here she was, a modern-day damsel in distress, standing at the precipice of a history that was not hers, yet felt so achingly personal, as if the universe conspired to answer. The storm roared to life with a ferocity matched only by certain apocalyptic blockbuster movies. Rain lashed her face like 1,000 tiny daggers, each drop a reminder of the lover's tears shed over the years. Thunder clapped boom, boom, a percussion section echoing the heartbeat of the universe, as the waves crashed violently against the cliffs, wrapping around her like the arms of long-lost souls yearning to break free from their watery prison. The moment felt both absurd and magnificent. Here she was, standing between two worlds, battling for the love that transcended both time and tide, with a stubbornness that would make even Wonder Woman raise an eyebrow. A part of her wanted to laugh, to hail the storm like a rock star, while another part whispered of the gravity in the air, an intangible weight that threatened to pull her into oblivion. Yet amidst the chaos, in that tempest of water, wind, and whispered curses of fate, Elijah felt a shift, a tremor where time itself intertwined with the fabric of her spirit. Everything stilled for a heartbeat, a pause in the storm, a breath caught in anticipation, as if history flirted with the present, flirting like a cheeky sprite. And then, in that brief and fragile moment, Elijah saw him, a ghostly silhouette of Selim emerging from the shadows of the storm, a flicker of hope wrapped in the potent aroma of salt and adventure. Elijah, his voice rang out, echoing through the chaos, and she felt the intensity of the universe pulsate like a drum, each beat syncing with her heart. For better or worse, time had shifted, and tonight they would not simply observe history, they would confront it head-on. A dance against the tides of time itself. Her presence was invisible to the love-stricken duo, but she could almost feel the weight of their unspoken words. From the shadows of the meadow, she beheld Selim's face twist with despair as he tucked away a letter, his fingers trembling as he sealed it with a haphazard splotch of wax, the kind you would hope would never find itself on the wrong envelope. The sweet tension hung thick in the air, shimmering like heat waves rising from asphalt, as if the universe held its breath, waiting for love to find its way through quills and parchment. Suddenly, Elijah felt an electric tingle, like licking a light socket, as she realized she had a role to play. If she could ensure their letters reached each other, perhaps she could stitch together the frayed edges of their story. A love letter long overdue. With determination lighting her heart, she flitted between time and space, watching their moments of joy and heartache unfold in vibrant detail. Each letter exchanged was laden with hope and despair, echoing the hallowed halls of countless relationships throughout history. Elijah marveled at the irony of their plight. Two star-crossed lovers, separated by societal expectations, bound by a love that felt so real, even in her modern bubble of microwaves and smartphones. It brought fresh perspective. Here she was, bombarded by notifications and streaming dramas, while they struggled to send a glimpse of their hearts wrapped in a fragile envelope. It was as if love itself existed on a different frequency entirely. One where touch was felt through ink, and longing resided in every crease of a letter. As the echoes of their reunion faded into time, Elijah found herself pulled back to her own reality, still cradling her heart in her hands, an oddly warm and squishy feeling, like hugging a giant marshmallow. Upon her return, she knew she couldn't keep this newfound knowledge to herself. She had to send her own letter, a shout-out to the ages. So armed with a pen, she poured her heart onto the page, crafting a message that would last long after her own time was reduced to dust and pixels. She laid it gently between the aged pages of a forgotten book, whispering a promise that one day a kindred spirit would find it and know they were never truly alone in the labyrinth of love. With a sense of peace wrapping around her like a well-worn blanket, Elijah smiled, for love indeed transcended time, and she had just added her voice to the chorus. Picture, if you will, the grand halls of Eldoria, where golden chandeliers glitter like fallen stars, and the air is thick with the perfume of blooming jasmine, mingling with the faint scent of treachery. Here, under the watchful gaze of King Eric, who, let's face it, could give a grumpy cat a run for its money in the scowl department, stands a court rife with ambition and desire. Queen Alara, a vision in rich silks, struts about like she owns the place, which, to be fair, she kind of does. Yet among this royal pageantry, whispers of secrets and lies slither through the corridors like a shadowy cat trying to avoid a bath. Who knew that politics could smell worse than yesterday's fish market? As the court bustles with laughter and the clinking of goblets filled with wine that flows like elation on a summer night, the atmosphere is thickening, teetering on the edge of suspense. It's the kind of place where one wrong glance could ignite a scandal, and where secrets are exchanged over plates of roasted pheasant, which, by the way, tastes a lot like regret when betrayal is at stake. Seraphina and Kaelin steal quiet moments hidden behind ornate columns, their hearts fluttering with forbidden thrills, but unaware of the storm brewing just around the corner. Picture it like a rom-com where every laugh hides a darker punchline. They dance between joy and calamity, not yet seeing the marionette strings pulling their fates. Gulping down sweet words, it's all fun and games until someone gets hurt, And oh boy, will there be hurt in this royal soap opera. Just when you think the stage can't get any darker, Lady Isolde strikes with the subtlety of an angry hippo. Channeling her inner villain, she crafts rumors as deadly as a poisoned goblet, oozing malice in every syllable, like an artist painting on a canvas of chaos. Lady Seraphina feels the heat of the gossip, her heart racing like a stallion at the races, while Kaelin's loyalty is tested, causing him to question everything he thought he knew. The very walls of the court vibrate with the electric tension of betrayal. Each passing day, a dagger aimed at their love. Secrets hide behind every mask, and as the court revels in its ignorance, the air tastes bitter, like swallowing a mouthful of dark chocolate without sugar. In the grand halls of Evernight Castle, with its dark stone walls echoing whispers of love and treachery, Prince Kaelin's heart beat like a war drum, quick and fervent for Seraphina. This was no ordinary courtship. The air was thick with anticipation and the scent of blooming night jasmine. Yet, lurking in the shadows was Lady Isolde, a viper in silken robes, her fingers dancing deftly as she spun webs of deceit and rumor to ensnare the innocent like a distant thunderstorm. Her scheming scent tremors through the court, words slithered from one noble's lips to another, poisonous and tainted, twisting Seraphina's character into something grotesque, molding her into the villain of a tale no one had written. Ah, love is grand, but ah, betrayal is the best soap opera. The court seemed to chant, juggling their gossip like eager jesters, awaiting the next punchline of tragedy. Stripped of her honor, and standing like a wilting flower in the confines of scornful whispers, Seraphina felt the weight of the world pressing against her chest, each breath a task as arduous as scaling the castle's highest tower. She wandered through the gardens, where the marigolds sneered at her plight, their bright blooms a stark contrast to the darkness gathering in her heart. Alone, she sought solace beneath the ancient oak, its gnarled branches like the arms of an old friend welcoming her grief. But even the rustling leaves offered no reprieve from the storm brewing in her soul. What do I do when the very walls conspire against me? She sighed, her voice barely rising above the rustle of the wind, which seemed to chuckle at her despair. The sorceress's offer dangled like a bright apple amidst a grove guarded by sleeping giants, tempting, yet perilously close to calamity. With each word Anwen soared through the air, the vibrant colors of the veil stirred with a beguiling shimmer, whispering promises that danced just beyond Seraphina's grasp. Truth at a cost. A sudden chill enveloped the garden, wrapping itself around Seraphina like a cape of foreboding doom. She could almost hear fate's smirking laughter echoing through the forest. What price could the truth demand, especially in a realm where loyalty was as fleeting as a summer breeze? Imagine daring to take the plunge into an abyss of glitter and shadows, she mused, an ironic smile ghosting her lips, the stakes rising higher than a game show finale. As the final threads of daylight began to weave away from the horizon, Seraphina stood poised at the precipice of decision, her heart a battle drum, echoing with a cacophony of fear and courage. She could already imagine the silken veil drifting over her, capturing the very essence of the betrayals around her. The pain and the passion intertwined like dancers in a grand ballroom, yet the weight of the unknown loomed over her, heavy and oppressive like the dark clouds gathering for a thunderous storm. Breathing in the sweet, earthy scent of impending rain, she felt the resolve bubble to the surface. Dare I hope for truth, or shall I drown among the lies? With a flick of her wrist and a steely gaze, Seraphina made her choice for love, for honor, and perhaps for a disaster worthy of epic tales for generations to come. The glimpses of betrayal flooded Seraphina's mind. Allies turned into shadows, laughter twisted into knives. She felt that familiar knot of dread tighten in her stomach, the kind that suggested a bad meal or an even worse decision. Isolde had woven her webs just as deftly as any spider, and Seraphina, poised for love, had carelessly walked straight into the silk. With her heart pounding, a beat reminiscent of a war drum, she knew she could no longer sit idly by as the women in the court paraded about like peacocks, their feathers boasting loyalty while secretly plotting her ruin. Rome wasn't built in a day, but I sure as hell can throw a few bricks at the wall, she mused, her resolve hardening like iron in a blacksmith's forge. Amid the flickering candlelight, Seraphina steeled herself. She stepped onto the polished floor of the court, her heart a battle drum echoing in her chest. The air was thick with the scent of crushed roses, a cruel deception masking the rancid undertones of conspiracy. Each smile she encountered had the potential of hiding a dagger, their owner's laughter filling the air like the sweet strain of violins before a grand betrayal. Whispers curled around her like smoke, curling into her ears, and she couldn't help but feel that every eye in the room was measuring her worth, a strange currency in this realm of treachery and allure. As the confrontation loomed, tension draped over the court like an uncomfortable coat, sticky with the weight of lies. Seraphina's resolve flickered like a candle caught in a storm, yet inside, a fire burned bright. She wouldn't back down. She was no frightened dove waiting for the hawk of betrayal to swoop. Instead, she would dance through this perilous masquerade with all the grace of a phoenix rising from the ashes. This Game of Thrones has grown tiresome, she thought, Let's stir the pot and see how many daggers come tumbling out. With her heart braced for the worst and hope tethered to her dreams, she prepared to challenge the darkness that threatened not just her love, but the very crown upon which her future rested. The grand hall of Eldoria sparkled like 1,000 stars, had been captured in crystal chandeliers, each one teetering on the brink of collapse due to the weight of opulence. Guests, clad in gowns that billowed like clouds and armor that gleamed like freshly polished silver, swirled around the dance floor, their laughter mingling with the lilting strains of a string quartet. The rich scent of roasted game wafted through the air, mingling with the perfume of powdered roses and lavender, creating an intoxicating aroma that wrapped around Seraphina like a cloak. Yet beneath the glamour, the tension crackled like static electricity, prickling her skin, a warning woven into the fabric of the night's frivolity. Everyone thought they were here for the dance, but Seraphina knew that shadows lurked in every corner, eyes watching that were not filled with joy, but with hunger and deceit. As music shifted, escalating from gentle waltzes to a fervent tempo that mirrored the growing tension, Seraphina spotted Kalen across the room. The candlelight danced off his golden hair, illuminating the warmth of his smile, completely oblivious to the web of lies being spun around him. How could he remain so blissfully unaware while Isolde, lurking like a predator among the daisies, sought to capture his heart with the venom of betrayal? A shiver of irony coursed through her. It was as if Romeo had wandered into a death trap instead of a masquerade ball, blissfully unknowing. She fought against the swell of despair, clutching her veil tighter, a lifeline amid the swirling chaos, breathing in deeply to steady the tide of adrenaline that threatened to push her into action. And then it happened. Like a spark igniting a powder keg, Seraphina confronted Isolde in an explosion of defiance that echoed through the hall. The music stuttered, then halted, as the revelers turned to witness the impending clash, eyes wide with anticipation, a drama that rivaled any tale spun by the old bards. You would manipulate his heart like a marionette. Seraphina's voice rang clear, slicing through the glittering air, a dagger thrust amid golden pleasantries. Isolde's laughter erupted, tinged with hysterical venom, as she spun a tale woven with half-truths and glittery lies. But Seraphina saw through it all like a counterfeit coin that passed under her watchful gaze. The court held its breath, not knowing whether the line in the sand they had drawn would mark the beginning of unity or lead to a catastrophic unraveling. The morning sun rose over Eldoria like a freshly polished crown, its rays pouring through the castle's arched windows, illuminating the remnants of last night's chaos. The air still smelled of burnt candles and regret as whispers echoed through the marbled halls, cobwebs of betrayal entwined around the hearts of those left behind. Kaelin and Seraphina stood hand in hand. The warmth of their fingers entwined a stark contrast to the cold aftermath that lay around them. They had emerged from the shadows, their bond tempered like steel forged in the fires of deceit. Like a superhero duo, they defied the lingering storm clouds, ready to face whatever destiny had yet to unleash. Perhaps armed with nothing more than their love and an emergency stash of chocolate truffles stashed behind Seraphina's bedpost. Meanwhile, Isolde found herself abruptly expelled from the very throne she had clawed her way towards, her ambitions crumbling like an old biscuit. Banished from the court, her echoing footsteps faded into the distance as she stormed out, leaving a spray of half-forgotten dreams and spiteful curses in her wake. The court breathed a collective sigh of relief, the looming specter of her machinations dissipating like morning fog. Servants gossiped as they cleaned up the remnants of her deceitful schemes, some laughing at the irony of it all. Isolde, once the queen of manipulation, reduced to a mere villainess in this grand royal drama. Who knew she would be the tragic hero of her own story? One quipped, earning a hearty chuckle as the people regained their spirits with each jibe. But rebuilding trust was no afternoon tea party. It was more like a high-stakes game of Jenga, played with rusted nails and wobbly tables. People had emotions like live wires, flickering between trust and doubt, some with hearts hardened like undercooked bread. As Kaelin addressed his court, voices quaking with uncertainty, he felt the weight of every unforgiving gaze, the tension like a taut bowstring ready to snap. Look, I know it's a wild world out there, with secrets lurking like grumpy trolls we forgot to feed, he began, eliciting awkward chuckles, his humor a balm for frayed nerves. Casting a glance at Seraphina, he added, but if we can survive Isolde's betrayal, we can survive anything, even a dance-off at the Harvest Festival. The room erupted into laughter, a sense of unity weaving itself back together as hope flickered like a lantern in a darkened passageway. Thus, amidst the fragrant blooming of wildflowers in the surrounding gardens and the cheerful melody of songs drifting through the air, the kingdom of Eldoria began to stir from its slumber. Kaelin and Seraphina, united by love and tempered by trials, took their first steps towards a future brighter than any sunrise they had known. They knew their journey would be filled with more challenges. After all, life was as unpredictable as a cat with a laser pointer. Yet, as they shared dreams and laughter, the lingering veils of destiny seemed to part ever so slightly, revealing the vibrant tapestry of hope that lay ahead. With each shared moment, a new dawn emerged for Eldoria, with the promise that they would face whatever came next together, equipped with nothing but their courage, each other's laughter, and perhaps a cat or two along for the ride.